I shouldn't be working with these people. This is way too big. It was like way out of my league.
How the hell does that happen?
I still have like total insecurities of like, no, like I'm not good.
Design and the NFL coming together.
Behind the facade of my work is like almost like a very corporate style machine where like everything's super organized. It's like really tight.
How did you, one, find your manager, or did they find you?
Like I feel like half the time I'm like, wait, what am I doing like today? What am I doing tomorrow?
Today on Low-Key Legends, I sit down with Santa Barbara's very own Surf Rap meets creative director, DJ Javier, the founder of the creative studio, Banyan Surf Club. DJ's studio where he's actively blurring the lines between art and design. We dive really deep into DJ's career and how he's been able to work with incredible, gigantic brands like Shake Shack, Billabong, the LA Rams, and Stance, all while fostering a creative fine arts practice on the side. The foundation of our conversation revolves around persistence and gaining momentum in your career, all while checking your ego at the door and staying humble in the process. DJ shares how working with a manager has lightened his load so that he's able to focus on the creative work instead of the business side of things, leaving that to his manager, which allows him more freedom and flexibility for his own personal brands and art projects. If you're in Southern California, don't miss DJ's hypebeast acclaimed solo art exhibition, Sari-Sari, which is up until July 14th, 2024. Check the show notes for that. And without further ado, let's get into the episode with DJ Javier. DJ, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to chat.
I'm super excited. This is going to be awesome. Excited to get connected and just talk story, pick each other's brains, and hopefully get other people excited by this conversation too.
I would imagine so, because you're not just doing like one particular thing. Your business is sort of comprised of a bunch of different avenues, which I'm excited to hear about how, one, you manage that, but two, you balance your time, but also even like revenue streams is kind of interesting. But I wanted to start our conversation off with some of your most recent collaborations with clients. I mean, you've worked with a bunch of huge brands like Billabong, Stance, Shake Shack, I believe like the LA Rams, and just a bunch of these huge names. But I'm curious how it is that these brands are, one, finding you, but also like how are you able to attract them with your specific style of art and design, kind of the culmination of those two things synergistically?
Yeah, it's funny. I have to slow down a lot and remind myself that like, whoa, I get to do this for a living, you know? Because sometimes like, I think sometimes I get so in the weeds where I'm like, oh, like I'm doing work, you know, when I'm just like, wait, this is a really big opportunity with a really big brand. But then, I mean, every single time, like, I mean, pretty much anyone reaches out to me, I'm just like, you want to work with me? Like, I still trip out. Like, I feel like I'm at the beginning, and I am at the beginning of my career, but I feel like I'm still at the very, very beginning. And so for me, I'm always grateful for those opportunities, whether big or small, whether like the mom and pop shop here in Santa Barbara wants to do something. I'm like, what? You want me to do like some work for you guys? Or like the LA Rams or like Stance, like working with them is like, I get the same level of excitement of just like people want me to like work with them. And so, I mean, I think social media has played like a really big role in my work of just being able to get my work out there. But, yeah, I feel like my career, it's for sure been like the long, like steady play. Like there was like a lot of just like the beginning of, you know, me really like kind of pursuing a creative career where like people were like, who are you? Like when I like would cold email people, you know, or like I'm just kind of like doing like whatever like clients want or ask. Like if I get my foot in the door, like I'll just be like, what do you guys want me to do? I'll do anything. But at the same time, like I was developing my own personal work, and honestly, just spending a lot of time. It was almost like I was working two jobs. Like even when I was like working in-house, and it was almost like I was working three jobs. Like if I was working in-house at a brand, I would also be doing freelance for other clients, but then also refining my own work, whether I was just like drawing all the time or making my own graphics or just making my own like shirts and only printing like 36 of them. Like it was almost like I was doing triple time, like doing like working for a brand, and then at night I'd be working on something, and then almost like after that I'd be working on something else for myself. And it was like varying degrees of like, when you're working in house, that's like I'm just doing whatever the boss was asking for. Freelance, like, okay, I'm doing a little bit more of what I want to do. Maybe these clients are like more in the direction of what I want to do. And then my own personal work is like, okay, I am the boss of this, so I'm gonna like dictate what it looks like. I've been kind of like really in my career for the last maybe like 10 or 11 years, like when I really took it seriously, like in my like early 20s, like, or maybe when I was like 19 or so, or 20. But I felt like now the pendulum is starting to swing where I'm like, oh wait, the things I want to do are the things that clients are asking me to do, which I'm like, that is like the craziest thing ever when someone presents you a mood board and like it's your work on the mood board. It's like, yes, of course I can do that because I made it. And so which is like the best feeling ever to be able to do that. And then now, like even then, like in my personal time and for like all my personal work, I'm trying to push myself more to be like, how do I evolve from whatever the client just showed me to be like, hey, I got even some like cooler stuff that I've been working on stylistically or developing that I can like show you guys. So it's like this constant like cat and mouse like chase of like trying to like just top myself every single time, and then like delivering that to the client to be like, hey, what if we did it like this? And so yeah, like I said, going back to that, social media has played like a really big role, and that's how like honestly a lot of these like brands have like found me. And then through like word of mouth and working with one person who then knows this thing, and then it kind of just like gets cycled around. And so I feel like that's how I've kind of, like in a very general sense, like that's how I've kind of ended up where I am now.
It sounds like a lot of dedication to the craft and evolving your personal style, doing the evolution of doing whatever someone tells you to do, to kind of having a personal perspective and style, and then leveraging that.
I think too, even working like in those more corporate settings, like for me, like all my experiences in my career thus far, like I wouldn't trade any of them because they all taught me something really important. Whether it's just like client skills or how to present or how to like concept or how to storytell or how to even build like just like phased out presentations and how to like walk a client through something. And so it's funny, I always like joke with people of like sometimes like the things I draw, like I'll make something for like a client and be like, oh, it's like a dog with like a funny hat like on a t-shirt, but people don't see that like, oh, I shared like 5 different PDFs prior to that each were like 30 pages with like reference and like concept and like notes about their brand and like all these different little like nuanced things, just to end up with me being like, here's a silly dog with a hat and a surfboard. But like for me, it's just like it's a thought process, and like I kind of took the corporate like skill and like all the things that I learned in those settings and kind of applied them to my own toolkit, and like used, obviously my work has like a lot of like my own perspective and humor and all that. But I think what people might not see is like behind the facade of my work is like almost like a very corporate style machine where like everything's super organized. It's like really tight how I like approach with clients and like work with them and like dialogue with them and like pick their brain and like the things I ask for and the things I do and like how I organize my Dropbox, how I present, how I concept and storytell and like all that kind of stuff. Like for me, it's like I build that in the background in order to like just make the best experience for both myself and like the client too.
Well, I think that's the thing that will never fully come across when, definitely not looking at an Instagram grid, or probably not even like a website, even if it's written in there with like certain aspects of like a case study. If you were talking to, let's say, either the DJ of 11 years ago or just like someone who's starting out freelancing, what would you say are the business aspects that you really need to focus on and hone in on and like have kind of tight, or like be formulating or getting tight to be able to level up your business side of the graphic design and I guess like pitch work effectively? that you can actually work with not just the mom and pop shop, but the bigger brands like a Shake Shack or a Stance?
For me, like just presenting well and
Hmm.
concepting. Like I had two teachers when I went to college. I went to college at Azusa Pacific, out kind of like outside of LA. And I had two teachers there. One was like had a heavy kind of like agency background, and the other worked for Disney, and he was like really big into like storytelling. And for me, those are the two like pillars of my work. Of one is like treat everything with like a high level of like respect, like whether you're working with a mom and pop or you're working with like a big client, like over deliver, like be on time, like kind of show off, like show them and walk them through the process. um like honestly just like presenting, like everything I do is like built out into multiple phases. Like I don't just kind of show people things. I'm like I kind of walk them through it. I do my research. I understand what their brand is and kind of like what they're hoping to achieve by working together with me. And also this idea, like, and then with the other teacher who was like big on storytelling and concepting. At the end of the day, anyone can like get turn on Illustrator and like click around and like start throwing type together. But like, what does it mean? Like, what is it communicating? Even if it's like something really simple, it's just being able to like walk through. And like unpack like a unique vision, I think is like super important. And so I think just kind of like having, like for me, like those are the two big things of like whenever I'm working on anything, there's like a reason why I'm doing something. And so maybe the reason is just like from like a design standpoint, like aesthetically, or the reason
Hmm.
is like, oh, because of like these pillars in your brand, which then like I kind of took apart and like I applied it to like this like creative direction that I'm building for like this little like marketing thing or whatever it is. I think just picking up on like the little like nuances is super important. Um, and yeah, I think too, I feel like in the age of like social media, I feel like sometimes it's easy to be like to see things on Instagram and be like, oh, the client's wrong. Like, like I feel like there's always these things where it's just like people will go like on Instagram and like do those like rebrand things where they'll like rebrand
Hmm.
and like, I'll fix this thing for like this big corporate client. This is where they messed up and here's my new version. But I feel like people don't understand like there's so much like politics and like nuance like when you're working with a client. Sometimes it's not as easy as like, well, this thing looks better and like for this reason, where it's just like when you're working with like the CEO and like the CMO and there's like stakeholders and there's like a marketing team and a design team and like, but this actually isn't really like what they're like hoping or like for like trying to like achieve. I think for me, like what I try to like kind of communicate to younger designers, like it's more of like a dance. Like at the end of the day, like you are an expert in your field and you're a professional and they're bringing you on, but it's like you're dancing with them. It's not like
Hmm.
there are moments like for myself where I'll kind of be more strategic and it's kind of like playing like a chess game and I won't show certain things and I'm like, this just doesn't look right, but I'll like kind of sell things harder that I know like I'm excited by this and I know it'll be great for the client. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they choose concept B instead of concept C and I was rooting for concept C. But at the same time, like it is like it's like a dance of like working together with the client. And I feel like I don't know, sometimes like designers, even myself, I have some moments of it where they're just like, no, client is wrong all the time. I am always right. And I feel like there's like some like give and take. And I think just being cognizant of that for like the young designers, where it's just like not everyone is your enemy. Like just kind of like work together and kind of like figure out a way to do it. I think is like a really big thing of just like being cognizant of that. I'm sure you've experienced it too because you're you know
Yeah.
you're operating your own studio as well, where it's like
Yeah,
it's not like just black and white. Like sometimes like you got to work with it.
it's so true. And when I get into those moments where I'm like, let my brain almost picture the client as the enemy, I'm like, whoa, we got to take a step back because, like you had said earlier, it's like they want to work with us, with me. That's
Yeah.
insane. Like the fact that someone reached out via email and like found your work, wants to work with you. One, that means that they think that what you do is cool. So from a baseline perspective, it's like they like what you do. It's just that they have certain particular goals that they're looking to achieve. one, there's probably an aspect of fear that they're like, oh, is this work going to pay off? Is it going to have some sort of ROI? Is the audience going to be receptive of it? So there is a little bit of fear there. And I think what our job is kind of mitigating that, kind of saying, hey, this is grounded in strategy. This is rooted in this aspect of your brand. And you kind of have to guide them through that. But ultimately, like you said, it is a dance where it's like they have a different perspective than you because they're not you. So they may like something different, which is maybe why, designer on Instagram or TikTok, playing with like a logo refresh thinks of it one way, but the design team that made that did it a different way because they had a different perspective. And that's fine. It's just like you had said, totally a dance, totally about what you can get across the finish line. And maybe it's not exactly what you were expecting, but if it's what they love, then that's a job well done and success in I guess my book.
One of the teachers that I was kind of talking about too, one thing that he always burned into my head is don't make it suck. Like anything that you approach. So even if it's just like I'm designing my resume or I'm designing like an email blast, or like even if like it feels like, oh, why did they choose that concept and like I don't really like that one, it's like, okay, well then bring it back home and like how do you make it not suck? And so even for me, like in the early on in my career when I was just kind of working on things I wasn't super excited by, like how can I at least arrange this type in a way that's like aesthetically pleasing and feels like just really nice from like a visual standpoint if I'm just like laying out type on the back of like some packaging thing, and so I think having that mentality of like, oh, if it went south and it wasn't really what I wanted to do, like, okay, how can I at least by the end of this make something that like, okay, I can put my name next to that and I can be excited by it.
Even like thinking about it is like, okay, what is the thing that I'm going to take away or learn from this experience? Whether it's like, okay, if I pitched like that, it didn't go the way I wanted, how can I improve that? Or I'm going to really focus in on making this the best typography that I've ever done or done for this type of project and learn from that experience. And maybe that's because I'm like big into stoicism or just kind of like self improvement, that I have a mentality where I'm like, okay, I want to learn from my mistakes and not just let it be like shitty, because that tends to compound when you're just like, okay, this was a negative experience. And then the next one, oh, they're just going to be like that again. Why do I even try? It's like, well, that's when you can get yourself into like a really, really big rut, and it affects kind of like your mental health and perspective on a thing that you originally loved.
I think there's some moments too, like where I've had in my career where like I've had certain clients where I'm like, okay, I will not actually work with them again. Like that's for sure like not going to happen. But more often than not, it's just like, oh, they, I think kind of what you had mentioned before is like, this is their baby and they're like shelling out real money for you to do something that's like, you're giving their baby a facelift, like to some extent. So like realize that like this is a sensitive thing, to like for someone to put their trust in you. And I, as we're talking too, like I thought a lot about as well, like I feel like to be successful like as you're kind of like starting up in your career, and this is like whether you're working freelance or working in-house, I kind of think like back in high school when you're in math class and they're always like, show your work. And so show people like how you got to where where you're at, as opposed to being like, hey, look at this like logo mark I did. And they're like, what? Wait, how, that's totally different than what like we pictured. But like for me, like everything I do is very like, I walk them through the inspiration and the notes, and like I, talk about like these different like kind of aspects of like their brand or whatever it is, or even if I'm working in-house, when, like back in the day, if I was working on something that I'm like, oh, this seems like kind of a turn for like the brand that I'm working for, like to show them like, oh, here's some reference, this is what I'm talking about, here are like some notes about the brand, and here's like, and then you present it to them, and they're like, oh, I see how you got there, and it helps them kind of like maybe get into your brain, or at least get on your side a little bit more, as opposed to so quickly being like, okay, I made a 3-page PDF, here are the logos, and they're like, why, what, where, how did you get to this point, And so I think it's that idea of just like back when, we were in school and the math teacher was like, show your work. And so for me, that's like a huge part of like, that's why my presentations are like pushing like, 30 to like 80 pages sometimes, because I'm like, I'm showing my work. And at the end of the day, like it shows the client too, like you are worth the money that I just spent, as opposed to like, what are you doing over there? You just spent 30 minutes putting this together, but like you're putting all together your notes and your thoughts and you're showing them like that you care about what you're doing. Therefore, the client's like, they are worth the money that I just spent because I can tell that they care about what they're working on. And so, yeah, for me, like that's a huge part of my work of just showing the client that like I care about what I'm doing, or like whatever partner I'm working with. So, client, whether it's freelance or whether you're working in house and you're just trying to show your boss something, put it together in a little PDF and just be like, hey, I was working on this thing. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, like no one likes to be caught by surprise of like, wait, what is this? And so I think just being able to show someone kind of like how you got there is super important.
Is there like a appropriate or right level of showing your work, DJ? Because like I'm assuming you don't want to put the client to sleep, like they're looking at too much information,
Yeah.
but I guess like what might be like the main essential pieces?
When I'm working with a client, I think first thing I for sure do is just like I have them send over any like brand guidelines or assets or inspiration from my work or other things that they're inspired by. And I think definitely taking and then obviously meeting them and picking their brain and kind of walking through whatever like their brand guidelines or things they're inspired by, like do's and don'ts of the brand. I think it's helpful hearing like the key things like that they are as a brand and the things that they're not. That way you're like not doing that way you're not doing anything that's totally off the mark. But I think when I'm presenting to clients, like I definitely take all the info and I do my best to simplify it and regurgitate it at the beginning of whatever I'm working on. So especially because like at that point for me, like the first presentation is almost like the biggest one, because at that point what I tend to normally do is I present sketch concepts if I'm working. Sometimes I mean I guess it all really depends on what the end result is. Sometimes I'll dive straight into kind of like vectorizing the work or like whatever it is. But that first PDF is always like me kind of regurgitating their goals to know that I'm listening to what they're talking about and I'm like on the same page, and then presenting reference, whether it's like mine or like kind of like reference pulled from the internet. I think one thing like I never do is I never show them anything in color, which like whether it's their brand colors or not, everything is in black and gray, whether they're sketches or vectors, just because like people can get hung up on color so quickly and it can absolutely derail all of the work you've ever done because they're like, well, so-and-so for marketing doesn't like green. And you're like, don't show them, like stay away from that. Like get buy-in and really kind of like butter them up with the ideas and the concepts. And whether I might show them a little bit of application, but what I try to do is kind of keep the cards close and I just show them a little bit at a time and I kind of walk them through it. And then the further we go in that's when I really begin to expand and expand and expand. And I'm sure it's the same with your process where it's just like you show them just like the key things. And then when they love it, that's when you start to roll it out with like color iterations and how it'll be implemented and how it'll look in print versus digital versus like large scale signage or like whatever it is, or like if there's motion integrated. But I think it's definitely, I kind of just say like hold their hand, and at the same time too, like don't put them to. It's kind of like what you're saying, like don't put them to sleep. Kind of like give them like enough that they're like really excited and they're like, oh, I want to see more. I'm so excited, but don't give them too much that they're like, oh my gosh, like quit clicking through this thing. Like I'm so tired. But don't give them not enough that they're like, is that it? Like, is that all you have to show or whatever? So it's just kind of finding that balance of like kind of you're almost like teasing them a little bit, and getting them excited. Is at least how I try to like kind of approach a lot of my projects.
Always having something to get them excited about for next time and to keep the project on track. So that way you have like those routine check-ins. So you're always making progress, getting them more and more excited as you build to this climactic like ending, which is this project release or mural or website, whatever it be. That's definitely like they should leave like more excited than when they began.
I mean, for me, like I said, I work in phases. And so I just kind of like at the beginning do my best to like I work with a manager really closely, and she's really good about being like, all right, here's the entire project from like front to back, and and here's when the check-ins are scheduled. And in between, we'll fill in like, oh, if there needs to be like a round 2 review or like some other type of review or like a meeting with a client. But we'll put like the big flags in the ground of like phase 1, round 1 review, phase 2, round 1 review, phase 3, round 1 review. And then in between, we'll kind of like slot other things, or if there's like kind of offshoot type meetings. But we try to like, for the length of when things need to be delivered to like when I start, we kind of put out like when those kind of like key reviews will be. And then, usually for me, it's like there's like a bigger gap in the beginning because like I want to be able to kind of like troubleshoot and work through the concept. And then it kind of starts to speed up. Like I'm sure, as you know, with your own work, like, oh, once like everything's dialed and I'm just implementing, then it's just like, okay, like I kind of get the gist of it. The client knows what they like, they've approved it. And now I'm just kind of like rolling at this point.
Well, you said something that I thought was very interesting, and we've never had someone on the show that's had a manager. So I'm curious, DJ, how did you, one, find your manager, or did they find you? And what is that sort of relationship like? Is it almost like having a project manager that you have on your team? Are you hiring them? Or are they through like an agency or a company? I guess, what is the working relationship and roles and responsibilities?
My manager, her name is Leah. We've been working together for maybe like 2 years or so, maybe two or 3 years. We've known each other for a long time. We used to work in like a small shared space here in Santa Barbara through some other friends who are freelancing, and so she is like a talent agent. Like that's what she does, and she also has like some other people that she manages. So she primarily works in the music industry, and so I'm her only visual kind of like artist, designer, like on her whole roster. And so, it's funny. So a while ago, my last like job, I was art director for the footwear brand CVs. And at the same time, all of my freelance kind of like partnership type work was really starting to build up, and like kind of like less of like, oh, just random freelance gigs, but I'm like, oh, these brands want to work with me and like put me at the forefront of like the marketing and like kind of market me with it, as opposed to like, oh, we had some guy do the work. They wanted to talk about me too. And I was like, man, I feel like all that is starting to ramp up and I'm getting super busy, and I feel like it's time to kind of like switch it up and go headfirst into like, because I'd worked in-house in agency and freelance and gone back and forth, but I think that was like a really big turning point where I'm like, I should probably like actually do this for real. Maybe that was like, 3 years ago, or two or 3 years ago. And I had connected with one of my friends who's a big photographer who has a manager too. And I thought he'd be like, no, don't do it. But he was like, honestly, it changes the game when someone can go to bat for you and it lets you do your work better and like have more breathing room to do that and not kind of like chase things down. And so I went to go pick Leah, my manager, her brain about it. And she was like, oh, like I'll manage you. And I'm like, oh, all right. Like I had no idea that like, I knew she was music industry. I wasn't sure if she wanted to like kind of work with me in that capacity, but we had been friends for a long time, and she loves my family and I care about her family, and we're really good friends. And so it was kind of like the perfect mix of like, she not only cares about like my career, but she knows that like this money is going to go to paying DJ's bills and taking care of his family. And so, it's been great because I've had more time to focus on my work and like the projects, and she's able to kind of like dig through the logistics of projects, not necessarily like day to day managing my work. Like for me, like I think I built such a like good system of like how to manage my own work that she's more so like, this is when it's due, here are the check-ins, like, and then I kind of like fill in the gaps there. But she's great just about like going to bat for me, especially when she's like, this doesn't sound like a good deal, or this really isn't in your favor, or the budget is lower here, but this is a really great partnership opportunity that could lead to more. Even like goal setting of like things I want to do. And she's like, how are we getting you in that direction? And so it's cool. There's a lot of like, I think, overlap with a lot of her music industry clients and the work that I do. And I think for me, being such a hybrid of like artist and designer, I feel like it was for her, it's like if I was just purely just like a designer, she probably would. She might work with me, but like it might not make the most sense. But I think because like there's such a forward facing element to a lot of my work and like partnerships, it made a lot of sense for her to kind of like step in and help kind of navigate those conversations and help me grow. And so that's been a huge just like proponent for my work. Like it really like pushed my career a lot, having someone go to bat for me and really just like manage conversations and like turn small opportunities into big opportunities and just kind of help steer me in the right direction.
Is she handling all of like the new business leads, or do things still come in through like your DMs and then you kind of connect those potential partnerships with Leah?
I mean, I still get like an influx of inquiries like through just DMs and email and like, you know, just word of mouth, friends, stuff like that. And then she brings her own like Rolodex into the conversation, which is helpful. And she can like bolster up conversations more, like because she like knows the right people or whatever. And so, yeah, there's like a good balance of like, you know, things come in and then she'll just kind of step in like pretty quickly and like we'll kind of like figure out the details. So yeah, it's nice. I feel like, and it's what's nice too is like we can play kind of like good cop bad cop because I get excited about like anything that comes my way, and then I'm like, okay, talk to Lee about money, bye. You know, I don't deal with the hard part of figuring out like that conversation, which is like unfortunate because like I feel like sometimes when you're on your own and you're like, I need more money, like this budget is too low. Sometimes people can be like, it can come off as like, oh, this guy's greedy, when it's like, no, he's not, or you know, they're not. They just paid more for their work. And so it's kind of nice when like, Leah can come in and kind of play, you know, bad cop in a sense of just like, no, we have to bump this up like a little bit, and which is great because she, you know, we like to, you know, review my work and see like from a realistic standpoint, like what is like what are you worth right now, like charging, you know, clients for them, like kind of like sussing all that out. But yeah, that's been super nice that she can kind of like just dive into those details. And honestly, I can spend more time actually like doing the work as opposed to like, I mean, you get it, like emails back and forth. Like you, like I haven't even started designing it. I'm still just like
it's so much time,
timelines and contracts and like all that kind of stuff.
I'm literally in the middle of that right now, where I've been in contract negotiations on a project for a month, and I feel worn out, and we haven't even started.
You're like, I haven't got paid yet, and I'm like I'm working right now on the contract. Yeah, so it's nice to have someone who can like do that. Like that's worth its weight in gold to be able to like, as that's happening and she's talking to new clients, I'm working on things that are already established and we're just working in tandem. Like so something's out the door and she's like, okay, here's the next thing, right up, and like we kind of just keep the ball rolling.
Have you learned anything, I guess, surprising from Leah about kind of your own self-worth as an artist and a designer? And has she kind of made you realize that you're worth way more than you originally thought when you were just freelancing on your own?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all the time I still have like total insecurities of like, no, like I'm not good, or like I shouldn't be working with these people. This is way too big. This is like way out of my league, you know? It's been huge. She's definitely helped me kind of like show like, you know, like I wouldn't be working with you if I didn't think that you were of this caliber, you know? And for me, I have my like a ton of insecurities, you know, with like just and I feel like a lot of designers do. They'll kind of go in and out of being like, I'm the best, I'm the worst, I'm the best, I'm the worst. So, and for me, for most of the time, it's like I feel like just not up to par, you know? And so it's helpful when someone's able to kind of like push you, and they're also like invested, like because they're essentially like a business partner with your work.
Yeah.
You know, so they have stake in the game to be like, no, you can do it, go do it, because I get a little bit of that cut too, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I need you to do this because it helps me, but also I believe in you.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, it's been super helpful because I feel like I've had more confidence when I walk into like certain meetings or when I connect with certain people to be like, no, like I can do it. Like I know I can do it. And I think it's been helpful because she's kind of helped frame my work in that sense and kind of like help push me more to be like, no, like let's go do this thing. Like I know like we can do it. And so yeah, that's been a huge part of my career, just to be able to like kind of reframe my vision of like, okay, I can do it. And kind of give me the confidence to just like step forward more and be like, this is a big project and a big client. But I know I can tackle this.
Speaking of which, are there any recent big clients and or partnerships that you've been particularly excited that we can almost like walk through as a case study and kind of either pick at little bits of your process?
Pretty recent one was my collaboration with Billabong, which was a pretty big deal. Because they're just like a globally recognized surf brand. I mean, at this point, it's like not even necessarily just surf; they're just like a big brand at this point. And that was cool because that was distributed globally and released globally too. So that was really exciting and awesome. And I was able to really like design like the whole collection from start to finish, which was super exciting. And it was like a bigger collection, maybe like I think like 15 items or something like that, or maybe a little bit, yeah, like around that. And so yeah, that was cool because I still get DMs from like random people being like, I just saw it here, I just saw it there, and I'm like, that's crazy. It's like literally all over. And so being able to do things like that, especially like it's crazy when like my name is on it, which I have to like remind myself, like especially with those opportunities of like put your name on it, like because a lot of the times like when I'm working with brands and partnering with them, they want to partner with me, and so there's like a logo lockup. It just says like DJ Javier and Billabong under it with like a skull drawn in the middle. And as I was drawing it, I'm like, is this okay? Like, am I allowed to do this? And I'm like, yeah, my name's gonna be on the Hig tag and my name's gonna be on the waistband. And I'm like, and it's funny because they're like, oh yeah, this is the one, this is the missing piece for the collection. And I was just like, that's crazy. Like someone out there is wearing a shirt with my name on it, which is like, I'm still just like, the 13-year-old me would be like, what? Like they have your name is on their back right now. And so yeah, that was a really cool opportunity and definitely like a big project because I think I was able to do it on my terms and create something that I felt like really resonated with, a lot of people, but especially like surfers of color, and even like, concepting and creative directing like the shoot itself. I was able to assemble like a team of, it was like all the talent in the shoot. They were all like my friends who are people of color who surf, which was super awesome. We shot it like in my studio and like literally around my studio. The whole video team and the photographer, they were all people of color too. And so for me, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it like my way, And so it was cool because Billabong was very receptive and they're like, let's do this thing, which was awesome. Yeah, just because I'm sure people can see it, but like surfing there's just a lot of white dudes.
Oh yeah, a lot of them. They look like me.
So it's fun to just like kind of do it on my own terms, which is super cool, and for Billabong to like fully back it.
I have a bunch of specific questions, but
Yeah.
I think most importantly, how did they find you? Was it social media? And what was the beginning of that conversation like? Was it, hey, we want to work with you on a collection? Or did that evolve into, hey, let's do these 15 pieces and it's all built around surfers of color and diversity? I guess like how much of your like vision and spin did you get to put into that collaboration and relationship?
Reached out to me on Instagram, which then turned into like an email chain. And there wasn't really like any specific direction. It was more so like, we want to work with you on a collection. And then that's when I then like, and like I said, like everything I do, I always try to like phase it out and concept it and like show my work of like, why are we doing it this way? And so, yeah. And as that's happening, Leah is stepping in the background, kind of working through details, like contract, design fee, royalty agreement, stuff like that. She's kind of like ironing out those things while I'm able to like kind of like concept and actually design the collection. But yeah, that was literally just DM. Like that was just a DM that turned into like an actual email conversation. And so, yeah, that's kind of like how that kind of like bloomed into
Mm.
something.
It seems like a love. When did a love of like apparel come into your life specifically? Because you do work on a lot of different pieces of clothing and they all have like a unique spin on them, but it all connects back to you as a person in some way, shape, or form. So when did that kind of enter your life or your stratosphere, if you will?
I think growing up, I was always like aware of like the clothes I was wearing, and I liked
Mm.
certain things, and I didn't like certain things, and I think too that then coincides with like being an artist and like enjoying art, you know, and so I think there's always something like about it, and even now, like I'm very particular about like what clothes like I like to wear, want to wear, and that's where like I end up either wearing a lot of like my own stuff or a lot of like my friends' stuff that I really dig and
Mm.
support and I'm excited by. I'm almost like I feel like in a way I'm almost like a cartoon character who wears the same things. Um, and so yeah, I feel like that. And then, you know, having my own like little like side projects and like making my own things for myself. I feel like then, um, you know, that then translates to like brands being like, hey, can you, that thing you did for yourself, can you do it for us too? Like,
Mm.
it'll pay you
Hmm.
for it. And so that's why I also always hammer into people's head, like, do your own thing. Like, if you're like, oh, if someone's like, oh, my dream project is to work with this brand, cool. Like, make your own thing that is your dream project. And like, with the hope that like it catches wind and then brands see that and
Mm.
they're like, oh,
Hmm.
whoa, can you do that for us too? And I think for me, you know, having my kind of like separate, you know, side projects, Kanto and Lumpia Surf Team. Like that's totally what it is. Like, and it's been cool because now clients will then reference like those projects and be like, "Can you do that for us too?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's cool because there's no holes. I'm just kind of doing my own thing, and so I think that really plays a big role into like my career. And I think what I feel like definitely an encouragement to other people of just like if you're if you're trying to chase something down, like do it yourself. And I think and to be honest, like you learn a lot along the way, like front to back, like whether it's like I want to design like this product and but like I want to do it for this brand or collaborate. This, for instance, if someone's like, I really want to collaborate with like this backpack brand, it's just like you'd be great. Like, what if you just like designed your own and learned about manufacturing and
Hmm.
production and learned how to market it and learned about like ecom and like learned how to do Shopify and like email marketing and like digital marketing and like all those kind of like bits. And I feel like it makes you much more of like a well-rounded creative person.
Hmm.
And so I think being able to like get in the weeds and do the work like really helps a lot in the long run.
Whenever I talk at like, whether it's like a college or design school, whatever, and I always kind of mention that you should have your passion projects alongside whatever you're doing, that your kind of portfolio is almost not enough in this day and age just because there's so many good people out there and you need to be constantly developing your skills, but your passion's going to come out way more in your side projects, and it can probably even overshadow everything in your direct portfolio, especially if you're working
Totally.
at an agency and you don't necessarily want to be there forever and you want to get to this next place or be working freelance. It's like that's kind of how you get there. And a lot of people will end up like, they're doing their fake Nike concepts, and that's cool, but it's like you can create your own thing and then you could print it or make a website, whatever it is, and then you literally have your own company. Whether it's like real or not or going to be real in the future, it's like, or maybe you should do not for Nike, but like who's the coolest third or fourth person on that list? Because they might even just want to work with you if you make something really cool. There's probably a better in that relationship if they're a little bit smaller. Not that you should be selling yourself short, but there's a lot of bureaucracy and to these bigger organizations, especially if you're just starting out. So that's what I encourage people to try and do to get their foot in the door, or not even in the front door, but in the side door, or wherever they can kind of squeeze in to that
So
equation.
like it's almost like your side project and like whatever that is like a living portfolio. Like it's not just
Mm.
like, oh, here's what I made, here's a case study. It's like, no, this is like an ongoing like blooming thing that I'm working on that's like unfolding like in front of people. And I think being able to have that is like super important of like it's like this is like a real thing that's like happening in real time as like as you're interviewing with a client or like working on something. And I think I feel like that's like super important to have stuff like that, because like it shows it shows what you're like really excited by. Like I've had a lot of clients, especially early on, bring me on because of like my little like side projects, or even like the things I post on Instagram that weren't for anyone. I was just drawing and like designing graphics for fun,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of those things like helped me get jobs, because they were like, we could tell you really love this, and like that's what we want to do. And so it's just a matter of like showing more of the things that you want to do and putting them out into the world, as opposed to showing all the things that you don't want to do and you just keep getting hired for the things you don't want to do. And so but it's obviously finding that balance of like, there's the things that pay the bills, like keep chopping at those, but like in the background, like still drum up all that kind of stuff that you want to work on. And then like the scales begin to tip, and people
Yeah.
are like, can you do more of that passion project stuff? Like for us, and passion project turns into like, I'm paying the bills type project. Like this is actually like helping me sustain like my life and career. And so yeah, I think it's super key to have those, and um take it serious. I feel like what I tell people a lot too is that just put a deadline on things. Like even if it's like a passion project or a side thing, when you put like a deadline on something, it just makes it more real. Or if you put money down on whatever it is, like say you're wanting to start like a t-shirt brand, and you actually buy like the website, like like the GoDaddy or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or even like I made an email for my clothing brand, like that, you made it a little bit more real. And so I think just like continuously like make it real, like do something to help make it into something. And then from there, it's just like, then it becomes, you're just getting the ball rolling, like when you're actually putting deadlines or like money or like effort into it, then like you're like making progress. And I feel like once you're able to do that, then it's like game over. Like you're like off to the races.
It's true. And I think there's a lot of like psychology around this too. If you like tell a friend and put money down, you're like upwards of 50% or more likely to do the thing that you said you would do. So, I mean, that getting your foot in and just like starting and then being forced to start because you've already, put money down, I think is incredible, especially on your own work, just to keep yourself motivated, because it's so easy to not do it. It's so easy to, I worked a full day, I don't want to work anymore, but the extra little bit that you do each day is going to exponentially compound over time your skill set and what you're capable of doing. And if it's you versus the person that isn't spending that little bit of extra time or dedicating some amount of time to growing their skill set and evolving, there's a clear kind of different one, in the mentality, but two, probably the skills. And I think one of those people is much more hireable or desirable to work with than the other.
I'm more so inspired by people who are just like really like excited and like wanting to make something happen, as opposed to like someone who's just really good at whatever it is, but like they're not really like driven or excited. Like I met a lot of like younger designers who are like building their own brands, and they're like, I don't really know, I'm just figuring it out. But I'm like, that is so cool. Like you have like that fire, and like you want it. And so I feel like that is like much more impressive to me than someone who's just like, I'm just kind of like good at stuff or whatever, but they're not really like driven, or they're like maybe in like a high position at like a company, but I'm just like, are you excited about this? Like we get to do this for a living, like we get to like create for a living. So it's just like, yeah, like I tell people all the time, like you could lock me in a room with a pencil and paper and I would have the time of my life. Like I would just be drawing or like coming up with things, or like writing things, or just like I truly never get bored, with that, because I'm always just like, whether I'm like just doodling or coming up with ideas or doing whatever, like yeah, like we have one of like the greatest jobs in the world of like being able to like create out of thin air.
I wanted to take a hard pivot because a lot of what we're talking about, I think we can find in your TED Talk. And I'm going to link it in the show notes. So if you're a young creative or designer and you're looking to kind of get into the freelance game or kind of figure out your own little side hustle, definitely give that a watch. It'll be down below wherever you're listening or watching. But I thought going back a little bit to what we were talking about before with kind of like creating and kind of building your story, um, and kind of the apparel side of things and all of that, I'm curious to you, DJ, what kind of makes a good illustration? And I know that is very abstract, but I guess to you, what makes a good brand? What makes a good illustration? And what kind of visually captivates you personally?
I don't know. I I'd probably say if it's memorable or not. And I think for me, you know, I almost see like it's. I feel like for me, my art and my design practice kind of like, or they do bleed over a lot in
Mm-hmm.
how I approach things. And I think for me personally, whenever I create anything, um, like for me, it's like, will someone remember it or like get the gist of it or like kind of like remember it in passing?
Mm.
Whether it's like, oh, that was really bold, or like I couldn't forget it because of the color palette. And I think this is me talking just through my own personal experience and my like personal taste and like whenever I
Mm-hmm.
create anything. Um, and so I think for me that is just like from a visual standpoint, that is like a huge component with like how I approach a lot of my work. Is if you had like an eighth of a second, will they remember it or be like that like DJ did that, you know? I think having that touch on things. And also if I think being able to have like what is kind of like the meaning or like the story or like the concept behind it, whether it's just like if it's very overt or if it's like underlying. I think at the end of the day it's just is it memorable, whether it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I know who did that because of like I can tell by like that touch that so and so did it, or it's like kind of like seared in my mind kind of thing, I guess, from like a visual standpoint. um, and I think for me, I guess like I think working with a lot of different brands, I think the brands that most stick out to me are the ones that like there is like an authentic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like storytelling elements or like you can tell they're really like about the things that they do. I think about like I'm one of the ambassadors for Stance, and so I've had different opportunities to sign with different brands, as like an ambassador, which is like hilarious to be like that's such like a crazy. I never thought I'd like sign like yes I will be a part of your team, which is like funny because I'm just like there's also like Dwayne Wade is also an ambassador for Stance, and I'm like, this is so ridiculous that like I'm on the same like ambassador page as him. Uh, but I think working with like brands like Stance has been awesome because they really embody like everything that I'm excited by because they um, it's less about like oh we're like a surf brand or a skate brand or like a sports brand or like athleisure or whatever, but they're more so like they're kind of like a platform for all these things. And for
Mm-hmm.
them, they're just looking for people who like approach their passions from like a perspective that's true to them. And so um, for me, like that really stands out. Like I really love working with them because they have like that perspective is like so important to me, and they kind of like uplift and like bolster up the things that I work on, and they present to me projects that are like really exciting that I'm like this is totally my vibe, whether or not I've done it or not. Like this is like a lane that I want to approach. In this day and age, like people can sniff out whether someone's being authentic or not, or like a brand is being authentic or not. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, like those are like really big standout things.
How do you think about your own values and how you approach either brand partnerships or the work that you are making or the art that you're making? Are there certain values that come across?
I think what's always like kind of like spinning in the back of my mind is just like I think my dad, he came to the U.S. from the Philippines in like the 1980s with my mom and like two of my older siblings at the time, and so he had like a crazy work ethic to be able to kind of like approach just like leave his home country and come to the United States. And so I feel like anything I ever do, anything I ever touch on is like I want to apply that same level of like just like drive, almost like
Mm-hmm.
this could be the last moment ever, like or else I'll have to switch careers. So I'm like I'm going to make this count, and so I approach everything I do, big or small, with that level of work ethic. My Filipino heritage kind of comes into play a lot with a lot of my work, and so and I think also too, and someone who I'm really inspired by is like Aaron Draplin, and he's done like a few talks about like the underdog spirit. And I feel like for me, like I've had that a lot in my career where I didn't grow up with like like a older sibling who was also into art, and they kind of like just kind of like shoved me in there, and I met people instantaneously, and I was able to do all these cool things. Like I didn't have like the fast track of like, oh, I know all these cool people who do these cool things, therefore like I'm cool now and I get to do these cool projects. Like me and my friends were just like, I don't know, we're just having fun. And even like in college, like me and like all my design buddies, we were just kind of like, we APU had like has a really awesome design program, but like down the street is like Cal Arts, which is like really respected and well known. And so I felt like almost in a way like, me and my friends, and I still have this mentality, is just like it's that underdog, like really scrappy, like I'm gonna make it work. Anything that I approach, anything that I work on, I feel like I just kind of apply that. That has just been like a driving force of just like I'm gonna prove myself right, that like I can do this thing.
It is, well, one, a mindset that it takes the ego out of it. You're always striving for something, working towards something, and it never puts you in the position of I'm the best so I can kind of like sit here and chill. You always have some sort of fire in your belly to kind of keep working and striving. And I think that's an important thing. Obviously, you have to balance it a little bit so you just don't work yourself to death. but I feel like if you love what you do, you're fine with either hustling or working long hours and kind of putting in the effort. It's just obviously balancing that if you have like a family and friends and all of the other things that you want to do in your life besides just design or hustling and working.
No, definitely, yeah. It's definitely finding that balance. And like I was mentioned before, it's like having that confidence that like I can do this, like I know I'm capable of doing it, but also that like I guess like the humbleness to be like I'm also not the best, so like let's pop this thing off, and I'm going to try my best. I'm going to give my best effort to everything I do, everything I approach. And so I feel like for me, like that is just like a big like proponent of my work, and I think that's why I do whenever I can like speaking engagements, and I try to like whether it's in like the design sphere or like a lot of like kind of youth stuff. Just because like growing up, like I felt like I'm just not really like good at anything, and I didn't really do good in school, and so like I kind of see myself in like a lot of like kind of like when I step into these kind of like situations where I do speaking engagements for like students from like I was that, like I could see like the students in the crowd in the back row of like, oh, I was the back row kid who was like, I don't really care, and so like being able to have opportunities to do that, and like, well, like I'm always like a big fan of the people who like are more scrappy and like more of like the underdog. And I think so that's kind of like a big like piece of like my like personal drive.
One of the collaborations that I thought was so cool, and this came out this year, was your collaboration for AAPI month with the Minnesota Vikings DB Cam.
Oh yeah.
Cam, which was amazing. And I'm just curious, like, how the hell does that happen? Like design and the NFL coming together for a t-shirt line to kind of spread a good message. So could you share the story behind that? Just because I find it so fascinating, and the videos were amazing. Like the products were amazing. If you haven't seen it on Instagram, it'll be on the screen, and you can still click the link and get your own. But yeah, if you could share that, DJ, I find that is like a perfect connection to everything that we've been talking about like value systems and cultural identity and how they all kind of collide.
One of my good friends, Nick, he's the creative director at Legends. And so he lives just like 30 minutes away, and like we've like always talked about like doing something together, and he was like, dude, I have this idea for API month, you designing a collection for Legends. And Legends is like big in the athletic space. And so, designing something that feels really true to like myself and my work, and that really speaks to like the larger like Asian community. And he's like, yeah, via our network, it'd be cool to have like a partner for this project who was of Asian descent and is like a pro athlete. And so it was cool because like Cam was just like one of the guys that was just like, oh man, Cam would be like insane to get to be a part of this, because like he's an amazing player, and like he's very vocal about like his heritage and his background and his story. I mean, even if you like Google him, there's like shots of him like in his uniform with the Filipino flag like wrapped around him, like in the stadium. It's just like you don't get Filipino people don't get opportunities like that all the time, and the fact that he proudly totes his heritage was like such a huge piece to the story. And so, yeah, they reached out, and he was like, "I'd love to be a part of this." And it's cool. So I designed the collection, and then we did that kind of like storytelling piece. I got to meet Cam, and it was super cool because it was just like he's such a chill guy, and you're like, you were an NFL player. Like it was fun. Like I still trip out. I mean, I trip out all the time over like all the opportunities I have, but I'm like, this is crazy. He's like an NFL player, but he's like super down to earth, and he was like really cool to like talk to and hang with for that day when we were shooting, and just hearing more about his story and his background. And it was cool because like that whole project, we wanted to hit on something that inspired that young Asian kid, whether it's just like they want to be someone like me, who's like an artist, creative, entrepreneur, whether it's like visual work, maybe they want to do music or like whatever it is, or like to be like a sports star, you know. And so like it was cool to hit it and from like two different angles where there isn't really like a ton of, you know, Asian just like kind of people in that space or like being talked about. And so it was cool to like have this like campaign where it highlighted someone who's like absolutely crushing it in the professional sporting arena. And to have someone like myself who's been able to do these big collaborations and like work with these big brands, and hopefully for like the young, you know, Asian kid out there to be like, whoa, like those are two routes where like there isn't a lot of us yet. Like here's the roadmap now, and here are people who are doing it too. And so, yeah, that was like a really, really cool moment to be able to share that with Cam, and hopefully just like inspire a lot of kids to be like, I want to do that too. Like if they can do it, then I can do it also.
We're going to take a hard pivot, but it's connected in a lot of these different things that we've been talking about. And I'm just curious because you do so many different types of projects, whether it's like murals or apparel collabs or illustrations. And I'm just curious, you also have your own personal line, the Olympia Surf Team. I guess what is kind of like the breakdown of your business and between, I guess, like direct clients and partnerships and personal work? How does like that ecosystem work?
You know, I don't really know how it works, to be honest. Like I feel like half the time I'm like, wait, what am I doing like today? What am I doing tomorrow? Like I mean, honestly, for me, like I use Asana, so like Asana just keeps me like totally plugged in. Asana, if you're listening,
Yeah, where's the collab there?
put me a check.
Yeah.
No, but being able to kind of like literally everything I do, like I'm looking at the little Asana icon like right now, like on my computer, like I just everything I touch, everything I work on, whether it's my personal brands, whether it's like the solo exhibition I just did, whether it's partnerships that I'm working on or a mural project, everything is just categorized and like everything has like a project number and a project name, and it's like in Asana. The Dropbox is also organized and broken down by like clients. Even if the client is like myself, like there's Olympia Surf Team like dedicated Dropbox that has all my production files and like marketing and all that kind of stuff. And so honestly, having a manager has been really helpful because she kind of like moves the pieces around and be like, this makes the most sense. This is how you'll hit your like financial goal each month. Like this is what you need to like pay your rent and pay your bills kind of thing. But yeah, I think I'm just very like cognizant of like what is happening at like every moment. And I just like, you know, I just try my best to kind of look at what I'm working on and just place it out like correctly and make sure like there's time to work on things. And then all my personal work, I just try to like drop in and like kind of like in like the in between spaces, or like if there's like a drop that I'm trying to plan for like my personal brand, then I'll like kind of flag that and make sure that's like really important. Maybe push that up in terms of like in like my workflow. But yeah, as far as like how I do it, I'm not really sure. I just kind of like I think having just like a formula for everything, like my presentations are like carbon copy of like layout wise and how I approach things and how I like I said, I mean, you can see my studio, like I have samples and then paint. It's like super messy. But my like Dropbox and Asana are like the most spotless, like squeaky clean, like filed, And I think having all the boring stuff organized makes it so you can work faster and everything else. Like sometimes if like I'm not able to like spend time concepting and like working on something, then I'll at least be like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna set up all the presentations for this project that I'm working on, but I won't fill it with any of the content. But I'll like update the date and the project number on like the main slides and on every single slide and like on all like kind of like the master pages, and then like
Yeah.
I'll update some of the type, so it's like and like kind of like I'll update like all the copy in the PDF, and I'll like change some of the notes and like all that kind of stuff before, and like I'll put in some of the inspiration, and that way like when I'm done concepting, I just drop it in there and like it's ready to go, and I'm not sitting there like, "Ah, now I got to make the presentation." So like sometimes when I'm like I don't really want to be creative right now, I'll literally just like make all my presentations or organize all the files for it, or like grab all the reference from the client and organize it. And so like I always do something that like kind of just like keeps everything in its right place. And so yeah, I think just having systems just makes it so you just like fly through it and you can get to the fun part faster. And so I think that's how I just like balance everything, is just like being aware of what you're working on, making sure your calendar is dialed, and just setting up like systems. So like everything is just like, you don't spend time spinning your wheels on like making a presentation when it's just like, I've had this template ready and built and now I'm just doing the fun stuff.
Yeah, no, it's so crucial, like having your business systems in place or knowing your process so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. So you can just kind of reuse pieces, copy and paste. I know that a lot of people, because I privately would ask people like what they were interested in hearing from DJ about, and a lot of them were interested in where your inspiration comes from, whether it's like movies, books, family, surfing, all of the above. So they were definitely interested in that and kind of how you landed on your specific style and what kind of things culminated in kind of the DJ Javier style.
It's funny because people ask me that and I'm just like, I don't even know where to pinpoint it. And I feel like that's where you have your best work, is when you just like, there's no shame in liking everything,
Yeah.
And so, whether it's like, I have like a library of just kind of like random books, and like there's a stack of random books like behind me that's kind of like cut out. And I just like save everything, like just a bunch of reference stuff, even if it's like random and like goofy or like whatever it is. Like I feel like I used to be inspired by like only very specific things, whether it was just like very specific graphics or like kind of street art or like things like that. But at this point, I'm just like, if something is cool, then I'm like, I want to remember that, whether it's like I screenshot it or like I save it on like Pinterest or whatever, or like I have it bookmark in like a book that I'm looking at. But yeah, it's funny. I feel like people can look at my work and be like, oh, he likes this or he likes this, and I feel like I just love like everything. Like, like whether it's like a little vintage like store or whatever that has like knickknacks, and being like, oh, taking a picture of like cool logo on like an old hat, or it's a huge like tag on like a freeway or something, or like a really cool old shirt, or like imagery from like surfing or like in the Philippines in like the 1950s, or just like, whether it's like hip hop or like, an old punk flyer, whatever it is. I feel like that's how you create like an authentic body of work, when you don't like limit yourself to like, oh, I only like these things.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it could be anything. My son loves watching Bluey, and I'm like, I love how the Bluey characters are drawn. I think that's the coolest thing ever. And like, there's little notes like that where I'm like, oh, I should draw my eyes bigger like that, because like the Bluey character eyes, like they look kind of cool when they're bigger. It's just like, just soak it all in, and then leave what you don't like and take what you do like.
Yeah, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, right? Just be like this, and that's it. I mean, anything can be a teacher and you can get value out of, as long as your eyes are open and kind of receptive to, I guess, learning from or receiving. So I think that's a beautiful mindset and a beautiful way to live that anyone can take away. It's just kind of being receptive to everything around you and learning from it, even if you didn't expect it, like Bluey.
That's been like a big part of my work of like, how do I just like connect all of the dots, whether it's in art or design, just kind of like merging things, you know?
That's how new things are created. I mean, that's probably how most musical styles evolve, or how new musical styles can emerge. It's just like all of these different references coming together in a sound or a visual medium or a culinary medium, anything, honestly, and create something that's unique or different.
I think that's how you can leave your mark, is like when you're able to kind of like do those things. And I feel like that's such an authentic representation of the person, when it's just like, I just like these things. They don't really make sense, but I'm going to make them make sense, you know?
Yeah, and just becomes your own. I think it's like, if you do want to have something that's like super ownable, it's usually you mess around until you find something that, one, you're good at, two, you like, and three is, I guess, replicatable by you for a long period of time, but is also open to evolving and shifting and changing.
Totally.
I want to talk about your solo art show, because you're not just a designer, you're an artist, and I think it matters that we touch on all of the aspects of who you are, DJ. So you opened up this solo art show, Sari-Sari. I want to hear from you about what you were thinking about when starting this kind of show. When did that kind of inspiration strike you that you wanted to do this? How did you kind of get into this gallery, and what were the factors that you were thinking about putting together this entire show and this collection of work?
I'm good friends with Matt, who owns Indoek, and Indoek, if people who don't know, they're kind of like just like an amazing curation of like surf and art culture, whether it's like through publishing or publications, print media, or like kind of content or merchandise. And so they opened this physical space that's in Ventura, so 30 minutes from me. And yeah, he offered me an opportunity to have a solo exhibition there, which is cool because I'm the second solo exhibition there. The first one was this guy Jim Ganzer, who's like an iconic old surf photographer. And so yeah, when he presented this opportunity, he didn't have anything like specific. He was just like, yeah, I'd love if you had like an exhibition here. And so yeah, with that, I was kind of thinking through what I'd want this opportunity to be, because like for me, like I've had exhibitions in places and been part of group exhibitions, but this is probably like the first like big solo like gallery opportunity I had. And so yeah, I was kind of thinking through like my work and my career and how it truly is like, it's just a mix. Like whenever I meet new people or like a dad on the playground, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, how do I explain what I do for a living? Because I do a lot, you know? And like it really is like a variety. And so the name Sari-Sari comes after Sari-Sari stores in the Philippines, which essentially Sari-Sari means like variety. And like those are like these little kind of like shack style kind of like stands that are either built like in front of someone's house or a part of someone's house, like on the sidewalk. And you can buy like, you know, like snacks or like drinks or like laundry detergent or toothpaste or like kind of random stuff like that. And so it's a variety. And so I feel like my career has been like a variety thus far of the things I do. And then even like the subject matter of my work, like whether like the paintings in the show, some of them are like very overtly like referencing like my Filipino heritage. Some are just very like kind of like California. Some are like an intermix of like the two. Some are like definitely like more like serious and pulled back, and some are like full on like implementing like my sense of humor. And so yeah, the show is kind of a representation of like my career as variety, but also like the subject matter of the show as variety. And so yeah, it's been like an incredible opportunity, and I'm super grateful for Matt for like opening up his gallery to my work. And yeah, I've been working, I think all in all, like it probably took me like 6 or 7 months of just like, I literally would just come to the studio and paint all day. And then all my design work I would just do in the evening, which like, I was like not, I wasn't just burning the candle at both ends. Like the candle was gone. It was just like the thread, like the wick. Like I was just totally fried. but it was awesome, and I'm super proud of like that body of work. Just because like, yeah, like I think it was like a true representation of like my like passion. Like no one was telling me paint these things and do these things. It was just me kind of like this. I was like, this is what I want to work on, what I want to create, and like having like the physical Sari-Sari hut that my friend Justin, who's a woodworker here in Santa Barbara, built. And then at first it was going to be blank, and I was like, once I started painting, I was like, I need to paint this thing, and so fully painted it. And then on the inside, it's like filled with like Filipino snacks and like little knickknacks from even that I pulled from my studio. And then we built this like 3 stacked like cube sculpture where it's like the head, the torso, and the legs of 4 characters, and you can like rotate them.
Oh, cool.
Which was inspired by like I kept thinking of back in the day when I'd go to like this pediatrician in town when I was young. They had like something like that where you can change the characters.
Nice.
And so I wanted something that like I want people to interact with the art and like change the art and be a part of it. And also too, like I just love the fact that like you're touching the art, and like in the Sari-Sari you get to go inside the hut. Because I've been in some gallery spaces and like been in kind of like those circles where I'm like, you guys are kind of snooty. Like, and I like bringing that kind of like level of like kind of fun and like youthfulness to my work. And so having, I mean, in the subject matter of the art, but then like the pieces being able to interact with, that was like a huge thing. And so, yeah, that was like a big thing I wanted to. I wanted people to feel like they were a part of like the work, and like there was no shame in like touching the work and like being able to like rotate it and move it and feel like you just changed the painting kind of thing. So yeah, it was an awesome opportunity.
Where do you think that comes from, that desire to bring that playfulness into your work? And I'm not going to say like childish in a negative sense, but like that childlike mindset. I mean, we talked about kind of like being open to like everything. And I feel like being creative, all of these things we associate with like kids and like their mentality, but we lose it often as adults. And that's why maybe some people get more snooty or finicky, or like, I only like these couple of things, they're my things, and I really own that. But where do you think that comes from for you?
I think for me, there's been like a few circumstances I feel like recently in my career that have just like made me more like, no, I'm just gonna commit to this.
Mm.
There's this one time where I had a large scale like public facing mural, and it went up for like public comment with like the city that I was working in, and there was someone who was very against like the mural. And what this person had done is they had pulled a old or like an article that this local newspaper wrote about me here in Santa Barbara, and the quote was that like I was inspired by like Saturday morning cartoons and like street art and like tattoos. And this person quoted it, and then they're like, do we really want someone like this painting a mural like in our city? And like I remember like being on the Zoom for like that public comment, and I was like, I did not know this public thing was gonna take this turn. And like it like really messed me up. Like I remember after like the Zoom was over, I was just like, I actually like I closed the Zoom and like I started crying because I was like, wow, this is like I felt like so low in my career, and I was like, what am I doing? Like my work is so like dumb. And like, but then immediately I think like the next day, or it wasn't even the next day, like it took a few days to like kind of bounce back, but then I was just like, no, this is like yeah, she quoted that, and yeah, that's true. Like, and I don't care. Like that's my style, and like guess what? It's not for you. Like I didn't make it for you. I made it for someone else. Like I made it to speak to people who like maybe like haven't been spoken to or like felt represented by. And so I think that just like kind of lit a fire under my butt of just like, you know what, I'm gonna do it my way. And like I don't care if like someone feels some type of way, because I'm like, it was never for you in the first place, you know? Yeah, this is me. I'm not gonna let anyone dictate or like talk me down or like kind of make me feel like I'm worth less than I am. Having experiences like that has just made me be like, you know what? I need to make a space where I feel like the people who aren't heard are are actually heard. And it's funny. I think what I think about a lot is I'm a huge fan of The Office, and there is an episode where they're having, I think it was a Christmas party, and one conference room they're playing like classical music and having like a traditional like quiet Christmas party, and then in the break room they're having another Christmas party, and they had like a margarita machine and karaoke, and they're just like having a ton of fun. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be I want to be in the break room where the margarita machine and the karaoke machine is, and I want to like flip this thing on its head. And so I think for me, that's just like a way. That's just how I try to approach anything. I'm like, you know what? I'm sick of like the cool guy act. That I feel like as you get bigger in like the art and design space, you're gonna meet people who are like, I feel like they're trying to like suss me out or like they're like trying to cool guy me, and I'm like, no, I'm sick of that. Like I want to have fun. I want to inspire people. I want people to feel excited. I want to uplift people and not feel like, oh no, I'm not going to show you my secrets, or I'm going to gatekeep, or like I'm bigger and better than you. Like I had so many experiences like that where like I felt like I was pushed down and talked down to. That I'm like, all right, this is if I'm like done with that.
And it's like one of those things where you get to make your own lane. And I mean, if just focus on what you want to do. I mean, if there's not a space for the type of thing that you want, then you can be the one to create it instead of waiting for someone else to create it. And that could apply to any avenue of your life, whether it's your, I don't see the style that I want in this music genre or this visual style, or oh, there's no one doing this on YouTube and I think that would be really cool. It's like, well, that's probably your cue to go off and do it yourself, because it'd be a shame to live your whole life thinking about, oh, that never got made. Well, you could be the person to do that.
Like you could be the first, or you could be a part of the movement that like pushes it forward. And even kind of going back to like why I wanted to create pieces that you could like touch and move. It's almost like connecting that highbrow and lowbrow of like, yes, these are like hand painted paintings, but like I don't know, kind of just like connecting like that, like those dots.
It is generally around the almost 2 hour mark where I try to dive into some fast and fun questions, maybe a little bit unrelated to what we were talking about. Yeah. Maybe it all connects in a synergistic way. But I'm curious how surfing entered your life and if it changed your perspective as a person and as a designer and an artist.
So I learned how to surf when I was 18. Two of my like best friends were like, you should come surfing with us because we go surfing. They went surfing all the time. And it's funny because I didn't learn how to swim till I was 17. So like it was like fast track, like learned how to swim and I was like, wait, swimming is awesome. And then learned how to surf from there. And it's funny, I had no desire to surf because I'm like, I don't know, it's just a bunch of white guys who wear big sandals. Like I don't want to, I don't want to learn how to surf. And then I like went surfing. I didn't like catch a wave, but I was like the act of like just riding even on your stomach on a wave and being like, whoa, this is a crazy feeling. And I feel like that kind of just like snowballed into like where I'm at now of like going all the time. Fortunately, Santa Barbara is like pretty flat most of the time, or at least especially in the summer. But yeah, I think, surfing plays like a huge role like in my work and daily life, and like how I even just like kind of go about my day of like when do I have time to like go, and like and I think it's a great act of like a hard reset, because sometimes I'm like, I feel like all of my extracurriculars and my hobbies are art related, so it's nice when I'm like, this is like a hard, like this is not like me drawing or painting, but then I end up sitting out there thinking about like, oh, I should do that thing for this client, and like in between waves. But yeah, so it's become like a huge part of like my work, as like kind of this like reset button for me during the day. And then also like kind of like within the subject matter of my work, obviously it plays like a really big role.
This is just my love of Filipino food in general, but I'm curious, to the audience who hasn't tried Filipino food, what would you recommend that they start with if there's a restaurant maybe near them and they haven't taken the dive in because they, don't know much about the culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think going into a Filipino restaurant not knowing and just being like, just give me like I feel like for me, whenever I eat at any establishment, whether like I know it or not, I'm just like, especially if it's new, I'm like, just give me your best, like you're
Yeah.
like top, you know. But obviously, you know, there's chains like Jollibee that are just like definitely more like you can walk in and be like, okay, I can kind of get it from here, or like there's like a lot of like Filipino supermarkets all the time will have like a hot bar, and I feel like, you know, asking someone behind the counter like, what do you like, or like what should I try, is always, you know, um, like the best way to just kind of then be like, get this thing.
Are there any books, movies, or shows that have transformed you personally as a person?
Ugly Delicious, that was on Netflix. I think it still is. But although like David Chang, he like kind of got like kind of was like under fire for a little bit. Just for some, I think he was like suing like some like other like kind of like Asian sauce brands. And so he was doing some like not chill stuff, but I think one of his episodes on his show Ugly Delicious was about Asian food. And that like was like it kind of opened my eyes of like, oh, there's a lot of people that have a shared experience like of like how they grew up and like the food they ate, and hearing these people like talk about like their stories and like their perspectives. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like so eye opening for me, and it kind of like that was like a big turning point moment to hear other people talk about it. And so I feel like that definitely, I guess like in terms of like being moved by something, like that was definitely something where, like I remember watching it being like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I have a shared experience with like so many people that I didn't even realize I had.
And food is one of those like amazing vehicles that it's so easy to share your culture via food because we all have to eat and food is so delicious, and it really can be an easy gateway into talking about like how we're so similar opposed to how we're different. But also it can be a vehicle to talk about how we're different and how that's so amazing that we're all different and we can learn from each other. So that's kind of what I loved about that show in particular, but also just like food as a means of kind of like change and changing perspectives.
I think it's super key to like kind of acknowledge people's differences and like celebrate them, to kind of see more like collectively people's differences as like a big mosaic, and you can still see individual pieces, but we collectively create like a really awesome thing. And I mean, even when you think about like assembling a design team for a project, like I feel like for me, like I think it's best to be like, you have a great art director, you have a great like web designer, someone who's like super good with like the visual like graphic stuff, who's like an amazing, who's like crazy on like Illustrator, and then you have like a great photo team and like a marketing team, and like kind of assembling like the pieces of like of, you know, and having everyone kind of retain their like unique perspective and style, but creating something special together. And I feel like almost in a way like culturally, like I think that's how we should see just like culture in general. If like we create something awesome together.
I love what you said about the mosaic, because that's so true. If we're all these different tiles and we're coming together to make something beautifully, holistically, I don't think there's anything more gorgeous in a way to illustrate that same point.
If you picture like being a kid and mixing all the paint, and then you mix it and it's like, it's just gray, you know? But like when like you're doing something with your elementary school, it's like, oh, everyone do a tile. It's just like, oh, we made a big picture, but it's just like, it's all individual, as opposed to like, you just dumped every color in there and it's just, it looks like mud, you know?
That's so true. I'm sure that you and your kid maybe had an opportunity to do that. Play with.
Oh yeah, a lot of times where I'm like, don't mix the Play-Doh, keep them separate. It's gonna lose its color. It's not gonna be pink anymore.
That's a beautiful message to come to a close on. But I want to open it up to you, DJ. Is there any final last words, wise words of wisdom that you want to share with the audience? Where can people find you online? Where do you want to point them to?
I mean, probably first easiest, I mean, you can follow me at _DJ Javier on Instagram. Also Kanto.vision on Instagram, and Lumpia Surf Team. So those are like my Instagram and my two brands that I work on. Yeah, and I guess I mean like I feel like parting words. I feel like my hope is that people hear my story and perspective and just apply it to whatever they're working on. You know, whether it's like it's art and design, or it's like food, or being like an entrepreneur, or whatever it is. I think maybe it's kind of like overdone or oversaid, but I think just like putting your nose to the grindstone and just kind of going for it, like really just like pays out and like dividends if you're willing to like actually invest the time. I spoke about it in my TED Talk recently, but like not having a safety net, been a lot of moments in my career where I'm like, should I really do this? And like it kind of forced me to be like, I'm gonna make it work, and it makes those victories much more sweeter. And so hopefully whoever's listening, like whatever you're chasing after, pursuing after, yeah, you can do wonders when like there's no safety net and your back's against the wall. Like you just become like way hungrier, and it makes the victories much more sweeter.
No one else is going to bet as hard on you as you are, and just give it your time and the attention and the energy, and take every project that you can if it's a good opportunity, and just really treasure it and value the person on the other side of the screen or of that relationship, and just honor them and do the best work possible for them, because that's going to pay dividends too, building those relationships, and as that kind of compounds on itself like time and time again.
I think that too just speaks to this idea of just like listening and being kind, you know. I feel like honestly that's just like a big thing that I feel like we can all learn from, and like approach things in life is just like, you don't have to be a jerk. Like it's not hard, it's not hard to be nice, you know. So I think that's one thing that I just try to like push myself and push other people, is just like, it's not hard to just be kind, you know, especially in this field where we're like working with clients and working in terms of like relationships with other people. And so it goes a long way when you're just like easy to work with.
So to the audience, remember that we're all legendary and have an amazing story of our own. On the journey, take the time to be kind, to grind and unwind. And together, let's make the world a better and more creative place to live. DJ, thank you so much. I mean, this has been freaking blast. And I've really enjoyed hearing the nuances of your story. If you want to hear more from DJ, there's the TED Talk. There's a couple articles. He's online. Check him out on Instagram, and everything will be in the show notes. So DJ, thank you so much for being here.
So I feel like this is super special, and I feel like people will be really excited.